be moved. We're fighting for our voting rights. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our voting rights, and yeah, just like a tree planted by the water, we shall not, we shall not, yeah, just like a tree planted by the waters, we shall not be moved. Shout it to your governor. Shout it to the neighborhood. Just like a tree planted by the water, we shall not be moved. One more time. We shall not. We shall not. Oh, just like a tree planted by the waters, we shall not be moved.
Hello, Richmond County. Well, I heard y'all had this young fella up here, about 19 years old, a minute ago. Am I right? What's his name? Mr. Watkins. I heard him up here trying to preach out in class. I couldn't make it hard. Y'all had the nerve to bring me down here, back up this echo a little bit, and have me follow him and Reverend Gatewood. That's kind of... But it's good to be here today, isn't it?
Yes.
Let me thank God for my president, President McQueen, who's been a good friend down through the years. Give my hand. And to one of the most organizing sisters I know, Reverend Jackson. Let's give her a hand. She's a powerhouse in her own right. And all the ministers that are here and all of you who gathered in this place, it's good to be with you today. Now I want you to know I'm dressed in red today with a red armband because we just left a funeral procession. We walked with 3 caskets down through the city of Raleigh. And we ran red to signify the emergency because of the policies, the wrong policies that have been inflicted upon our state by extremist legislators. That's where we're coming from today. We gathered out there in Raleigh. We watched the sad state of affairs. In fact, that's why 1,006 people got arrested, Vera, since April of last year up until this year. Not because we wanted to, not for fun, but because we were challenging injustice. Trying to remind the legislature under Tillis and Berger and the governor that just because you are elected doesn't mean you get to elect to not follow the Constitution.
That's right.
And recently, a judge agreed and threw out 960 of the cases made. So threw them out and said we should have never been arrested in the first place. You know, my friends, it's wrong to get power and then use it to hurt people. That's just wrong. And it's wrong to violate and what we call the good of the whole. The Constitution of North Carolina was written in 1868 by blacks and whites when they came together in fusion politics, said that all political power comes from the people and should only be used for the good of the whole. Yes. And so anytime you use political power just to help a few people, that's wrong. It also says it's wrong when you try to suggest that the only moral issues in government, in politics, is prayer in the school, abortion, and homosexuality. The reality is, if you look in the Bible, there are only about 5 scriptures that speak to any of those things I just mentioned, and 4 of them most people misinterpret. And not one of them trumps this scripture. You're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself.
That's right.
But if you go to that same Bible, there are 2,500 scriptures that speak to how you should treat the poor, how you should treat the sick, how you should treat women, how you should treat the least of these, how you should treat children. And so it's wrong for people to try to suggest that those are the moral issues. The reality is budgets are moral issues. Healthcare is a moral issue. How you treat teachers and public education and children, all of those are deep moral issues. In fact, in North Carolina's Constitution, do you know it's unconstitutional to deny people public education? In North Carolina, blacks and whites in 1868 demanded that education be a constitutional right. And it says in the Constitution, you cannot take public money and give it to private entities. That's in our Constitution. And yet, this General Assembly, under the leadership of Tom Tillis and Barber and Governor McCory, in less than 2 years, they began a campaign of extremism. And it's amazing what they're trying to sell North Carolina, and they think we're buying it. They're trying to suggest, Dr. McQueen, that if you want a great state, you know, North Carolina's motto is that we're a state where the weak grow strong and the strong grow great. And they are suggesting that this is how you get there. You want a strong North Carolina? Deny access and money to public education. And they've done it to the point now that North Carolina is among 14 states that have cut the per student funding by more than 10% for the current school year compared to before the Great Recession. That's in a recent article. In other words, we are among 14 states that are going lower rather than are going higher. In fact, now, under this leadership, North Carolina puts less money in education for its students than people in Mississippi.
Shame.
And I'm sorry to tell you that when you can be lower than Mississippi, that's pretty low. In fact, I hope the preachers here forgive me, but I was in Mississippi recently. I got off the plane, went to the building to speak, couldn't get in the room before somebody said, "Barber, you from North Carolina?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "What the hell is going on in North Carolina?" They said, "We used to look up to North Carolina." Our legislative leaders from Gatewood have chosen to prioritize tax cuts for the wealthiest and tax cuts for corporations over tax cuts for taxpayers in the public. They raised taxes on 89% of North Carolinians so they could cut taxes for 11%. And that's just wrong. And when you undercut the investment in public education today, you threaten North Carolina's long-term economic prospect tomorrow. But they say that's how we get to a better North Carolina. They say if you want to get to a better North Carolina, deny teachers a raise or come up with a scheme that looks like a raise but really is not a raise. If you want to have a better North Carolina, according to them, deny health care. And so in the first week when they got into office with this supermajority, they denied 500,000 people Medicaid. That's poor people, that's working people, that's construction workers, that's fast food workers. In fact, it even includes blind and deaf children. Thousands of them right here in Richmond County. They denied unemployment to 170,000 North Carolinians who lost their jobs of no fault of their own. While Tillis, for instance, was giving hefty wages to his assistants, and the governor was paying people whose resume doesn't even add up to what they were being paid. They were taking unemployment. They denied earned income tax credit. That's for working for 900,000 North Carolinians. Now, let me explain something. Ronald Reagan, George Bush 1 and 2, Clinton and Obama all supported earned income tax credit. When you can make Ronald Reagan look like a liberal, you are mighty extreme.
Oh my.
They denied women's health and access to things like cervical screenings. And they denied the LGBT community, and tried to, their rights. And however you feel about that, you're in America. America says everybody gets equal protection under the law, regardless of your color, your sexuality, your age. Doesn't matter. They denied labor rights. Tom Tillis said that raising the minimum wage is a dangerous idea. It's dangerous to pay people so they can work and live and eat.
Right.
That's a strange notion. And I want you to tell you that when they denied all of these things, and they're saying this is the way to a better North Carolina. I want to tell you, like Johnny Coltrane would say, which was down here in Hampton, I understand. Johnny Coltrane had an album called Love Supreme. And I want to tell you, he wouldn't play that in the General Assembly because they're not engaged in love supreme. They're engaged in wrong extreme. And not love is supreme. In fact, I want to tell y'all today, I almost said that some folk need to go to Dr. McQueen and take a pill. Because they a pill for delusion, brother McQueen. That's what I want to know. You know, they appeal when you're just deluded because, and I say this laughingly, but I'm hurting, they call themselves Republicans. But it's almost an insult to Republicans. And the reason why is because, listen, Lincoln was a Republican. And he believed in voting rights and labor rights and fairness, equal protection and law. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. He believed in health care and labor rights and minimum and living wages and taking care of education and the environment. Eisenhower was a Republican, and he put more money in public education than any other president before him. Benjamin Hook was a Republican, the president of the NAACP, and he stood for voting rights and labor rights. Jackie Robinson was a Republican, and he stood for voting rights and fairness. So when Tillis and Berger and McCrory, after doing all of these things, call themselves a Republican, that's an insult to historic Republicans. They are not Republicans. They are Tea Party, art Pope paid for extremists that have hijacked the Republican Party.
That's right.
And that's why in the Forward Together Tomorrow movement, 11 to 16% of the people that went to jail were Republicans and independents. That's why we've seen black come together, and white come together, and Latino come together, and Asian come together, and straight come together, and gay come together, and urban come together, and rural, and business leaders, and labor rights, and the unemployed, and the uninsured, and doctors, and medical professionals have all, and students, and parents, and teachers, because we recognize that we are North Carolina, and we're not going anywhere. This past week, my friends, Diane, I was in Birmingham, Alabama. I had a strange experience. I was thinking about all this going through, and God has a way of reminding you, it might be bad, but we've been through worse. If we hang in there, we can win. I went to Birmingham, and they took me by 16th Street Baptist Church, where they blew up those 4 little girls in the basement of the Sunday school of the church doing Sunday school while they were studying the Sunday school lesson, Love Your Enemies. And I stood there and looked through that window, and right there they have a monument where they keep 4 new roses on it every week in remembrance of those 4 girls. And I was reminded that when they blew up those girls only 17 days after the March on Washington, it didn't make people quit. Instead, they cried, but then they kept moving. Young people heard about them blowing up those girls, and they said, okay, if you're going to blow up our babies in the South, all of us going to come to the South. You can't blow us, all of us. And the next summer, they had Freedom Summer. And young people from all over, from Shaw and from Fayetteville State and from North Carolina Central and A&T and all over, went up to a little college in Ohio, and they studied up there and learned how to do civil disobedience. And they left there, and they went down to Mississippi and Alabama. And they killed 3 more. Swanner, Cheney, and Goodman. And instead of leaving, the kids brought more. They said, we're never going to let anybody turn us around. Then those young people said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to organize now. 50 years ago, it was Freedom Summit. After that, after their colleagues were killed, they said, well, let's march from Selma to Montgomery. They began to plan a march from Selma to Montgomery. And the first day they left on a Sunday morning, they were beat down like animals. But they kept going. Viola Russo, a white woman, was shot with a shotgun and while she was transporting people back and forth. But they kept marching. James Reed, a white Unitarian pastor, was killed, but they kept marching. I stood a few weeks ago, Brother McQueen, on the steps where Dr. King gave his speech after they made it from Selma to Montgomery. Stood right there in the same place, because they now doing Moral Monday in Alabama, by the way. In fact, there's Moral Monday now in 15 other states. Oh yeah, there's an army rising. And I stood there and I heard people speaking. When it was my time, I couldn't be reminded, I couldn't help, so I grabbed my phone before they called and I Googled his speech and just to see what he was saying there 49 years ago. And he opened his speech by saying, they said we'd only get here over their dead bodies, but we're here and we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. And while I was down there, I thought about how just a week later, after they finished the march, that Lyndon Baines Johnson introduced the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He ended his speech with, and we shall overcome. And on August 6, 1965, Republicans and Democrats passed the Voting Rights Act. They did not re-elect people. They changed the context in which elected people had to operate. So that people who said they would never vote for the Voting Rights Act voted for it because the people marched and they stood up. Lyndon Baines Johnson was a segregationist, but when the people marched and stood up, even he had to change. And the Lord said to me, go back and tell the folk in North Carolina, if they made it through all of that back then, surely, give me that's a little mic here, surely. I want to tell you, if they made it through bombs, ain't nobody scared of no tea. Y'all don't hear what I'm saying. If they made it through drive-by shooting, nobody's scared of somebody that's been sniffing coke, K-O-C-H. Somebody better tell Pope and all of them, you don't have enough money to buy us all.
That's
because
right.
We come from a people who had something that bombs couldn't blow out, and water couldn't wash out, and fire couldn't burn out. That's why I'm so offended, and I hope you are, when I think about House Bill 589, that bill that came out of Tom Tillis' house right after Shelby. Senator Apodaca out of the Charlotte area said when the Supreme Court, 5 of them wrongfully overturned the Voting Rights Act, he said now that the headache has been removed. A Republican operative up in Asheville was asked on one of the shows, he said, what do you think about this new bill you passed? He says, well, if it hurts a bunch of Democrats, so be it. If it hurts a bunch of lazy students, so be it. If it hurts a bunch of black people who want a bunch of free stuff from the government, so be it. That's almost an exact quote. And when I think about all the stuff we went through, and yet we got a legislature that will try to suppress the vote, take away same-day registration and early voting, because women used it and 42% of black people used it, cut early voting, cut out of precinct voting, stop straight ticking voting. When I think about all that we've been through, that, to go after voting, after you've done all those other things, denied Medicaid, denied unemployment, denied earned income tax credit, and denied public education and public education funding, but when you go after voting, that's like walking through the blood of the martyrs. White and black martyrs. That's like going to my grandmama's grave and opening it up and just throwing the bones around. Somebody ought to say is wrong. For politicians to not want people to vote, that's what one of the judges in the Fourth Circuit said. Why is it that politicians don't want people to vote? But not only is it wrong, and not only is it a desecration of the memory of the martyrs, it's a sign of fear. And it ought to be what encourages you. It ought to be what makes you vote like you've never voted before. Because if people have to work this hard to stop you, you must be a bad somebody. You know, if they gotta work this hard to keep black folk and white women and men and students from joining together and voting, you ought to flip that thing over and say, what if we come together?
That's right.
Come here, sister. Come here. What if, can I invite on the stage? Come here. Come here now. What if we come together? And I want to tell you the what if. You see, they know. Touch your neighbor and say, they know. If the people vote, we win. Y'all see what I'm saying? Give me something. Give me Dr. McQueen and you, Diane. If the people vote, I just want to say, and we win. See, you get all this color and all this diversity. And all this, male and female and gay and straight. And if we get to voting, y'all know how grandmama used to make good vegetable soup. Throw a little of that in there. Get a smoked neck bone, put that in there. Get some lima bean, throw that in there. Put a tomato in there. Grab a white tater. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about, huh? Put a little bit of that in. Throw some sugar in there. Put a little piece of butter in there. We got any cabbage? Put that in there too. And by after a while, you mix up that, it'll feed you. See, they know that there were 286,000 black people who voted in 2008 and 2012 that didn't vote in 2010. But if you vote, not new registered, just that group, they know, listen, I don't want them to know we know, but there were 400,000 white women.
Like me?
Yeah. That voted in 2008 and 12 that didn't vote in 2010.
Oh, I'm going out.
You're going to go get them. I mean, your sisters. But think about it. If that 400,000 white women hook up with the 286,000 black folk that's already registered, ain't but one word for that. Good God Almighty. That's the word I know. Huh? And they know that the margin of victory is not even in new registration, but in the people who are already registered. And if you add to that the new registered, that's why they didn't want same-day register. And that's why they want to go backwards. That's why they want to suppress the vote. Because they know if the people vote, they will not vote backwards, they will vote forward. So I stopped by to tell you, don't worry about the Tea Party. Don't worry about Pope and his power. Politicians may be for sale, but we're not for sale. They may have the audacity to say, elect me and I'll take your health care. Elect me and I'll take your Social Security. Elect me, I'll resegregate and defund your public schools. Elect me and I'll ignore your poverty. They may think we're fooled by that. But we need to recognize we got power. We got 3 days to early voting. And we see politicians that pander to bigots. And I saw my picture on a ad. I'm not even running. You got to be scared. I woke up this morning. Curtis, I woke up this morning. My whole picture in full vestment was in a political ad. And I'm not even running. I said, my God. If you put somebody's picture in your ad that's not even running for office, you must be scared. Never in history have we seen so much money being spent to resist equality, to take us back. It's lewd, it's pornographic, it's blatant, and it's arrogant. These are troubling times. Corporations are being treated like people, people like things, and And these are critical times. And I want to end here where I said something I said in 2012, and it's like this. And if we ever needed to vote, we sure do need to vote now. Those folks, you say, if we ever needed the Lord, we sure do need the Lord now. But I want to remix that, because sometimes the Lord's already given us what we need. We just need to use what the Lord has given us. And I stopped by to tell you that our parents did more with less than we have. With less they beat slavery. With less they beat Jim Crow. With less they beat lynching. With less they beat the KKK. With less Elizabeth Canton, a white woman, beat those who didn't want women to vote. With less Harriet Tubman got 500 slaves out of slavery. And y'all know what that sister didn't have? She didn't have email. She didn't have text. She didn't have Facebook. She didn't have texting. And she didn't know what Twitter was. She didn't have a car. All she had was faith in God, a .38 pistol on her side, moss on the north side of a tree, and a North Star in the middle of the night. And she did more with less. So touch your neighbor and say, we've got to do more with more. So from now, I want you to email everybody you know. And I want you to tell them it's time to show up. I want you to text everybody you know. I want you to MySpace everybody you know. I want you to call every friend you have. I want you to get on Facebook or any other kind of book. And in fact, I used to tell folks, I don't know how to tweet, still don't. But those of you that do, you know what you better do. You better tweet, 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 tweet. Everybody you know. Because God is not going to do for us what we can do for ourselves. Somebody stand on your feet and slap your neighbor a high five and say, if we ever needed to vote, we sure do need to vote now. And I thought I might preach just a little while, that if we do what we're supposed to do, then God will show up. God will bless our efforts. He always has, and He always will. When we work our faith, miracles and movements happen. Faith is what you believe about God. Work is what you do because of what you believe about God. Faith without works is dead, but faith with works is dynamic and can change your destiny. And whenever we work our faith, God shows up. Do I have a witness here? When Moses worked his faith, stretched out his rod, used what he had in his hand, then God showed up. And the winds came down, and the Red Sea opened up, and Pharaoh was brought down. When Joshua marched around Jericho, then God showed up, and the walls fell down. When David threw the rock, then Goliath came down, and the next morning, the bigger they come, the harder they fall. When Daniel went in the lion's den, then God showed up and made a pillar out of the lions. When Shadrach, Meshach, and that bad Negro went in the fire, then God showed up and calmed the fire down. When Esther said, if I perish, I perish, but I'm going to see the king, then God showed up. When a woman touched the hem of his garment, then God showed up and cured her blood disease. When a boy gave the Lord fish and 5 loaves, then God showed up and a buffet came down to heaven. When Jesus went to the cross, then God showed up. Satan's kingdom was torn down, and early Sunday morning, resurrection happened. When Thurgood Marshall went to the Supreme Court, then American segregation was brought down. When Rosa Parks sat down, then God stood up and Jim Crow was brought down. If we vote, party will be voted down. Because every time we put our faith and our works together, evil is shut down and God shows up. Now I've got a question. Do I have a witness? Won't God show up? Won't God show up? Touch your neighbor and say, neighbor, what's in your hand? A voting registration card. Say, what's in your hand? Use what you got. God will If we ever needed to vote, give me those. We sure do need to vote now. Give me every one of them. How many of you have got your voter guide that we gave out? Hold them up. Anybody doesn't have one? Laura, where are the rest of them? Melinda? We want to hand them out. It tells you where. It doesn't tell you who to vote for. It just tells owners. We can't tell you who to vote for, but we can tell owner. We can tell you who endorsed them. We can tell you where they got their money from. We can tell you what they voted for. Now you got to make up your own mind. But we can tell what? Owner. And you can take these voter pieces and show them anywhere. 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 Now there's a young lady that's going to sing a song. And she's going to start singing. And when she sings, I want y'all to stay there. And when she gets to the end, y'all, I don't know if she has it. We have that track. I want you to pop it in. And then so that everybody in the media can see it, I want those of you who will come and get a pledge card. It says this: you should be angry. So use that anger. You dance it, you march it, you vote it, you talk it. Never stop talking it. From Maya Angelou. And I want you to take this. It says it's a pledge card, and it's a pledge that you will go and vote and get 4 other people, at least, to vote early and to vote in